War Game Warriors.
Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the War Game Warriors podcast. Today, we'll be talking about Anthony's run at LVO and his experiences and overall thoughts. Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Anthony, why don't you tell us about LVO for the people that might not be as familiar with it? Kind of like a brief overview of what it is and what its significance in a 40K.
Yeah, sure. So LVO, more commonly known as Las Vegas Open, is a massive miniature expo, where it's not just Warhammer 40K. There's a bunch of game systems that kind of all happen in the same like conference center of a hotel called Rio in Las Vegas. So there, aside from 40K, which had the biggest amount of players there were other game system tournaments going on, such as for like Age of Sigmar. I think it was Star Wars X-Wing or Legion, and there's Kill Team as well that was going on. And there was just a lot of people that are coming for a lot of events, and as well they had a vendor section. So there was just a lot of like a little shopping area you go to and pick up a lot of like merch for LVO as well as for any kind of vendors that you might know like Barons of Dice. There's also like Games Workshop there, that kind of fun stuff. And I think for the Warhammer 40K one, it had the most amount of players. There were 1,100 players at this event, so you can imagine
Oh.
1,100 people in one big room.
Yeah, I also heard that that was like the highest that's ever been, right? The highest number of attendance for 40K, and even
Yes.
for AOS, they doubled up because I think last year they only had around like 500 or 600, and this year they almost broke 1,000 players as well. So quite a bit of players going to this single event.
Yes. I don't quote me on this, but I do believe that Las Vegas Open's like 40K event is the largest 40K event in North America, if not the whole world. Don't quote me on that, but I'm under the understanding that this is the case. So it's definitely a very like hot event. I think yeah, there were like 4 or 5 streamers, like big streaming organizations there like Tabletop Live, War Games Live, Games Workshop was also covering it. So there were a ton of like streamers that you guys are very accustomed to watching for big events. They were all there covering it. So
Yeah, definitely. And I guess with the number of players there being the biggest event, it naturally brings a lot of competition.
yes, yes, a lot of competition, and a lot of people you don't usually play with, right? Like so for me, this is the first my first time traveling to the States and pretty much going to the States and playing people who are American and and I'm sure we'll go into it in detail as well as going into a completely different layout. So it definitely was a different experience for better, much better than for worse, but yeah, it was definitely an experience.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, and it's good that you mentioned the layout's different because the layout there is all played on GW terrain, right? And for us, local listeners here in Ontario, we are very much accustomed to WTC. So tell us quickly about what the main differences are and like how was your experience with that?
Yeah, so LVO in the player pack and in reality what he did was they split up the like 600, 500 tables they had in this hall into 3 different categories. So there was FLG, which was basically basement terrain, whatever terrain it could scrap up. They slapped it on those area terrain plates and sent you on your way. There was a certain percentage of tables that were WTC, and then the majority was GW layout. So throughout my 6 rounds, I played on GW layout 4 times, WTC once, and FLG once. And it's definitely a very big difference because in WTC, we're here in Ontario, Canada, what we're used to is it's a lot heavier and a lot denser on the table. So it really benefits melee armies because you're able to stage a lot easier, and shooting armies oftentimes have to overextend to shoot you or don't have those long range angles to get at you at range. In
Right.
games, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In Games Workshop, not the case. Like you can shoot across the map. Like you actually get to use the full 48 inches of your turret and your tank. And it was definitely experience too, because sometimes, especially in day one, we'll go into it in more detail, I'm sure, Jason. But there were times in certain missions where you cannot hold no man's land without being completely in the open, which is not like
Yeah, and I'm
WTC.
sure that was a completely different challenge for you just because of the army you play. So why don't we head on into that? So why don't you tell the listeners about your list and what you brought to LVO, and as well as yeah, just your general kind of game plan.
Sure. So I brought Custodes. I brought Folger's Worlds List. I think that I would be doing him a disservice trying to snowflake and make my own spin. I respect the list and himself too much to take away from just how effective and how efficient that list is.
Yeah,
So for
it's quite
those who
optimized, right? The list.
Oh, it's so optimized. It does require a lot of skill to pilot because if you have very little chaff, so you can't go around doing you have to be very careful how you use your chaff early game because if you go and do cleanse turn one or air denial and it dies, you're gonna run into problems of like how am I gonna screen turns two and three, which is how you might make or break the game later on. But back to the list. The list that I brought was two tanks, which are the anti-tank tanks for Custodes. I brought three wardens. Each was being led by a blade champ, which allows that unit to once per battle advance and charge, and also gives reroll charges. I brought three sister squads, two of which are the Scout Six Flamers and the Rhino. And as well, I brought one squad of four guard with Draxus, which is the lone oppable Inquisitor with a ton of shots that are very anti-infantry, which I believe outside of bikes, Custodes do lack.
Mhm.
Yeah. For the strategy in itself, Custodes are primarily a very primary focused army. My job is to hold my expansion better than you can. If you can crack that puzzle, I lose. If you can't crack that puzzle, I win. That's very honest 40K. Um, the way that I had to go about doing this throughout these 6 rounds, however, it was completely different than how I'm used to doing it in WTC, just because
Mhm.
the staging points are all different and the angles you get shot at are different, and it was definitely a learning experience, but a really great one.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it'd be different just because of how open the GW layouts would be compared to what we're very much used to the WTC with them, lots of big area terrain plates, bigger L ruins, and all that, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a learning curve, to say the least.
So why don't let's hop into your day one experience and who was your round one opponent?
Yeah, so for the first round, we played Mission A, which is Take and Hold, Raise Banners, and Tipping Point. I played Jaden Ames on Tau Ret Cadre. Great player, great opponents, and in fact, all of my opponents were stellar. I had no problems with it for 6 rounds. Um, but yeah, I was on GW layout. I believe it. I don't remember which layout number it was. But it was the one that is for Tipping Point and he had a standard Ret Cadre list. He had two Riptides, Hammerheads, the Crisis Soup, good stuff. The one that can go up and down, that
Mhm.
kind of fun stuff. Um, but yeah, it was very standard deployment and strategy. My goal, like I said, is to secure my expansion better than he can. And the way that I saw it was there was no actual way for him to attack my expansion without overextending if I positioned the wardens in such a way and angle because they'll still be open and you can still hit them, but you have to come very close to me in order to take them off. And the fact that Tau is monophase allows me to manage the 4-up Phenol Pain once per battle a lot easier.
Yep.
So he was very hesitant on trying to come to my expansion. Because as shooty as Tau is, their biggest problem is they have very low OC. So they can't really out OC 18 OC Wardens. And I proceeded to just slam Ward into his face to drown him on his expansion. So he never and he got a bit cautious of the advanced charge with the Wardens, and that was great. He respected it. The one thing was that I think he respected it too much and played a bit too defensive because I was able
Hmm.
to take him off all no man land objectives, and eventually around turn three, I was able to crash into his lines consolidate into like a bunch of his meat and potatoes And the way I consolidated was if he fell back of anything, a lot of it couldn't shoot with the Riptides. But if he had to fall back, I could reactive move 6 behind the wall. So it was stuck between a rock and a hard place for him. So
Yeah, like Tau is like Tau has that problem where even though they're able to shoot in combat because they are vehicles, the biggest downside and the biggest like boon for you would be that because your army list is primarily infantry, you just try and tag as many things as possible, and then afterwards he has to either fall back with everyone to shoot, or he can just eat the -1 to hit against you, right? But with Great Cadre, I think like it's pretty safe to actually shoot in combat because their battle suits actually ignore modifiers, right? So I don't know if he actually ended up staying in combat to shoot you, or if he made the decision to fall back so other things can shoot you.
so he made the decision to fall back with most things. I forget which one he left me out, but from my understanding, I don't play Tau, so we kind of took the rules, and how we played it was he by the time I crashed into his lines and it all happened, he only had one unit left that could actually guide, and it was tagged in combat. So the problem is, according to the rules, you can only guide if you're eligible to shoot. And stealth suits can't his stealth suits couldn't fall back and shoot.
Right. Yeah, because they're
So
yeah.
yeah, so even though you could fall back and shoot or shoot in combat, you're at -1, but then you're not being guided, so it's almost like you're overwatching me almost. So it was
Yeah,
kind of
because you
rough.
and on top of the fact that you probably still had your feel no pain, so it
Yes.
just made it so much harder for him to actually break out of the warden jail that you created
Yes.
for him.
Yes. And then the primary game cast from there.
Yeah, so that seems like just very standard because I've played against you numerous times and I know like how the gameplay works and it just seems like your game plan just went completely according to your plan. You know, very smoothly, no hiccups, and you did what you needed to do, and he was unable to solve that piece of the puzzle, and therefore he lost the game.
Correct. It was a textbook what I wanted to do. Very
Yeah,
textbook. Yeah.
awesome. So how was the round two?
So
What was the mission?
round two was Mission C, Linchpin, Fog of War, Tipping Point. Just so you guys are all aware, day one was all Tipping Point, and day two was all Crucible of Battle. That did really help. I think from a TO perspective, it really helped with the turnover of rounds because the terrain didn't have to move. There was no
Yeah,
15-minute rejigging,
that's a
and
very clever way to do it. Although
I
it could be potentially boring, but that
yes.
in a 1,100 player event, yeah, that's what you got to do sometimes to compromise.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I would take that compromise any day. That was a really good, smart way for the TOs. But so I faced Cam Howard, who was playing the Mirror Custody Talons.
Oh, fun.
So we got to play cat and mouse with reactive move all game. He had a gorgeous diorama. I have a video of it. I'll put it in the podcast and post. But it was a
Sure.
gorgeous diorama where it had like a smoke machine in this diorama, and it looked like the Hobbits, like Lord of the Rings, is like the mountainside with little huts, and it
Okay.
had his custodians on it, and from the smoke mountainside, it had smoke coming out of it, and it was like beautiful. Um, and he was a really good guy. Like I really enjoyed playing with him as well. So again, it was a very similar list he brought. The only difference was he had a squad of bikes, which a lot of people like, but I don't I have my reservations about them. But the
Mhm.
thing that I was really concerned with was he had a Calidus assassin.
Oh, yeah, that could be a potential mirror breaker. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a mirror breaker if he positions it perfectly, because if you guys don't know, the Cal's Assassin has a Vect aura. So he can make my reactive move cost 2 CP and his costs 1, and that really puts pressure on my resource management.
Yes.
He also had 2 tanks. So the main strategy here was I wanted to limit his army to be a monophase army as soon as I could. If I can do that, my 4-up Feel Pain resource becomes more manageable, and I don't have to stress over the 4-up Feel Pain, the Vect Aura, on top of Custodes being so tanky. So turn two, I was able to line up a play to take out 2 tanks. So I was able to get line of sight on his 1 tank with 2 of mine by bringing one out of reserve, and then moving one into Lav sight. And then I was able to ingress advanced charge another squad of Blade Champ Warden squad into the second tank on the other side of the field by his home field. And he did a really smart play. He reactively ingressed by his bikes to heroically charge when my Blade Champ squad connected. But I again, this is from just having reps of Custodes. What I typically do with Custodes is if I'm trying to avoid or anticipate to avoid a heroic, I will actually stretch out the squad so that they're not all jumbled up to be within the closest charge distance required. This allows me to kind of block off certain surface areas. So I don't want to be, if I want to be closer, I can be, or if I want to be further away from certain areas, it gives me some agency.
Mhm.
And from there, I was able to roll. I think I rolled like an 11-inch charge the first time, and I go, "Oh, that's not good because that's gonna get within 6 inches of his bikes." And I re-rolled it into like a 4, and I was able to get in such a way where after the pile in, all of my wardens could connect, but I was always 6.1 away from heroic. And
Yeah, that's a really high level play there. That's like something that, like not a lot of players actually think about, but being able to identify how to block a heroic from happening and re-rolling an 11-inch charge. I'm assuming you had a 3-inch charge
it
because
was a, it was
on
a
a
four
lesser,
it was a 4-inch charge.
it was a 4-inch charge. Okay, so it was slightly risky, but yeah, you definitely made the play to uh, basically block his bike heroic play, which is fantastic there.
Yeah, yeah. It was like I weighed the risk and reward, and the reward heavily outweighed the risk.
Yeah.
So the Wardens did swing hot and kill the tank, and the two tanks in shooting also killed the tank. And a wonderful thing about, like I said before, the main strategy here was to eliminate the tank so that it becomes a monophase threat. I was able to proc his Warden's 4-up Funeral Pain early, just because I happened to draw Lav sight with the two tanks to his one tank on his expansion, as well as the Wardens on his expansion. So he was forced to pop the 4-up fuel pin because it has to be declared at the start of phase, and I just shifted the target to my original target, which is the tank.
Oh
So
wow! So you even baited the 4-up feel no pain against him.
yes,
That's unfortunate for him. Yeah,
yes,
that's good.
yes. And then what ended up happening is because he wasn't able to heroic the other Blade Champ squad, he had to spend his time digging my Warden squad out.
Yep.
And then this was another big brain play I say that I did was he sent another Warden squad to hit the my Warden squad that took a tank that's near his home field. And when it was all said and done, I had 3 Wardens and a Blade Champ left. And I did a really big brain play where I spent 3 CP. So the first CP was to just I had to insane brave. I did the not say brave. I did the desperate escape test so that I could move through his models, and I didn't roll like 3 1s out of 4 dice. And I was like, oh crap, okay, I don't want all of them dying. So I spent a CP to re-roll a Desperate Escape to get 1 Warden left and a Blade Champ squad left. So I moved 6 through his models. I'm on his expansion where he has 3 sisters left, or 4 sisters left. Then I spend 1 CP to allow them to fall back, shoot, and charge. So then I was
Yep.
able to basically just clash into his home field on my turn and take him off his home field on a mission, which is Linchpin, where you need to hold your home field in order to score maximum primary. And after that happened, the primary game just collapsed for him, unfortunately. I was able to hold him at his expansion and contest it and take him off his home field. And yeah, that was that.
Wow. Yeah, it's like being able to recognize when you need to do the fallback shoot charge and a desperate escape is to get onto the primary. And I find that that's something that like you can identify quite well because in all of our games it's always just being able to identify when it's the right time to like hit the expansion, the enemy expansion, as well as potentially the home if you have any cracks left open in their defense, right? So there's a kudos to you for being able to recognize that.
I also recognized that like before when I started playing when I wasn't playing at the level I was before, the one thing I did notice was trading points. I was very focused before about like, how many points is this unit? Oh, well, I have like X points and yours, X plus 50. This must be a good trade. And I've gone to the point now where I don't look at it that way. because this list does not allow me to look at it that way. Because custodians will always trade down. I'm running a
Yes.
350 unit in your face. Like no one has like if I go by that mentality, I'm never going to attack you. But what I do look at is I don't as I what I do look at rather, sorry, is how will it affect your scoring potential right now and in the late game. So I don't care if I lose a Warden squad trading into, 5 scouts. If it means it denies you primary for 2 turns and that's 10 points, I will gladly take that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's huge to be able to identify like not just trading on resources, but also being able to trade on the points, right? Points is how you win games. It doesn't matter whether you have one model left in the end of the game or you have your entire army. If you have a point differential by one in singles, that's still a win. It doesn't matter what it is, right? So,
Yes, yes, exactly. In an ideal world, all of your units are at half strength, but it's not an ideal world. And a lot of times, what happens is I'll win the game, but I'll have like a Rhino and like one like sister squad in the backfield left,
yeah,
right? And it just
exactly.
this list really stresses you because you have to get used to keeping your cool, while seeing your entire army get picked off the table, but you win by a considerable by a margin. That's just how the
Yeah,
list is
exactly.
designed.
Hmm.
But
All
yeah.
right. Sounds good. So it seems like the amount of reps you have, as well as your experience with custodies, kind of led you to victory for that round. How about your round three?
So round three, this is like this last round of day one. I was against Imperial Knights, and I was playing Scorched Mission D, so Scorched Earth, Swift Action, Tipping Point. And this was my one and only game in FLG terrain. And I will tell you right now, GW layout, I actually don't mind. WGC, love it. FLG, I'm not the biggest fan. And the reason why is because it offers the opportunity for magic boxes to happen.
Oh no,
The-
we remember magic boxes from eighth edition. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those who aren't aware of what magic boxes are, uh, basically in Warhammer 40K, you guys cannot if your unit or your base of your model cannot get within an inch of the enemy model, you cannot declare a charge on the unit. And FLG terrain is basically basement terrain, and the terrain that I was given was a literal square, about 5 by 5, something like that. So I was able to perfectly put like a 6-man squad of custodians in there, maybe have one sticking out one end sometimes, and be an inch off of 3 sides of the wall. And the way that this worked out is because I was facing knights and because I could put my models an inch from the wall, his big bases, number one, could not charge me. And number two, because of the GW ruling of first floor being you can't shoot out of it, he couldn't shoot or charge because he couldn't fit his base in it. So hence magic boxes. You can't interact with me.
Yeah.
So his list was Canis Rex, Helvern Spam. I think what are those Melta ones called?
The War Dogs. I mean, no, not War Dogs. Sorry, not Helverins. Oh man, I'm also blanking on the name right now. It's the melee one.
It's the melee one with the
Yeah,
Melta. It's the
yeah, it's the
melee and
melee one with
Melta.
the Melta. That's
Whatever
right.
that one's called. Someone's gonna flame me in chat or something about it. But
Yeah,
the Helverins and not brigands, the loyalist brigands. Okay. But yeah, those ones, and he had another Callous Assassin for Vect and Voidsman. The game was pretty straight.
Warglades. That's what they're
Thank
called.
you, thank you, Warglaive.
God dang.
So you had Warglaives, Helverins, Voidsmen, and Callous Assassins, and Canis Rex. The game was almost textbook. I held my expansion better than he could. The one big swing that really took it down was that in the early game, he was able to get Helverin because he got first turn. He got Helverin in my face really quickly, so
Mhm.
I had to bring in my tanks from reserve a turn earlier than I wanted to. Just because the way the game was running, if I didn't put it in turn two, he could have potentially screened out the entire board of all the edges because the Voidsman and the Assassin and the Halverin are pushing up the sides. So I wasn't able to put tanks in ideal positions. But the biggest swing was when somehow five Wardens and a Blade Champ took Canis Rex down to 2 wounds.
Holy crap! You must have rolled pretty hard for that.
Don't know how. It was lethals and wounding on fives and no rerolls. And he had a 4-up Invon, 22 wounds, and a 6-up Feel Pain. Don't know how it happened. It just did. And I was kind of sweating a bit there because I was hoping to at least like charge something else and put 18 OC to out OC's expansion. But then I didn't realize Canis Rex's OC goes down when it's bracketed. So ended up working. Primary swing went to my favor, and knights are good in shooting, but if you touch them, they kind of fold, especially against Custodes. And from there, I kind of just swept the board.
Yeah,
But
especially
yeah,
with that box being able to stage
the
pretty
magic
well. So
boxes. The magic boxes were brutal. I apologized to Dave. I was like, man, I'm sorry. Like, this is just FLG. He's like, nope, I get it. It sucks. I should have brought like Tyranids or something. I don't know.
that's what he said.
No, he's just like I don't know why I'm here with Knights. He told me he's like it's my third FLG match. And I was felt so bad with the magic boxes, and he's like, dude, this is my third game on this kind of terrain. Don't even worry about it. And he
Oh my
won it,
god.
and he won his last 2 games. Right, he was 2-0 like I was going into
Yeah, yeah.
this.
So he's obviously not a bad player by any stretch of the means, right? So it's just yeah. Sometimes you just get unlucky. Like that's the problem. Like not a problem, but that's just kind of like how singles goes, right? Like even though you can be like the best player at the event, you could potentially, depending on the matchup and what you draw, who your opponent is, like there's so many kind of random factors that leads you to potentially going from winning a GT to going like 3-3 or whatever. So it's just a lot of times it is luck of the draw. There's skill involved in it, but yeah,
There's a lot of RNG when it comes to singles.
exactly,
That's for sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you finished day one going 3-0. Must have been feeling pretty good going into day two. Spirits are high and confidence is high going 3-0 on this. And so yeah, how was let's go to day two and how was your game four?
Day two, I woke up feeling like Icarus. I was really close to that sun, and I was like, and I remember I was telling my team, like, guys, I'm three. They were following LVO as better, more close than I was. I was in the thick of it, and they were like, "You're 3-0. You had to go for it." And I'm like, "Buddy, I am just going the punches. I don't even know what I'm doing here at this point, being 3-0. But we're gonna ride to the sun and see how close we get." So it brings us to round four, or the first round of day two. I faced Liam Harvey. He's from the UK, and we played Purge the Foe, Rapid Escalation, and Crucible of Battle. Now, I will say this. I typically play teams, and you, Jason, and Eric are usually my brain trusts where y'all tell me the pairings, and you guys have always told me ACDC is a toss-up with Custodes, so we don't want to put you into that. So I have been blessed to avoid that matchup, and for LVO, I practice for almost every single army except for ACDC. And
Yeah, and for people that don't know what ACD is, it's a CSM or Chaos Space Marines faction detachment. They play Chaos Cults. ACDC is a Curse Cultist and Dark Commune combo, which is hence ACDC. They run at you very fast. There's a ton of bodies. It's like most lists have like 120 cultists. They just like kind of swarm the board and then like really just like play the primary game quite well and jail you quite well as well. So yeah, so we continue.
yeah, you just wrapped it up perfectly. They hit hard, they move fast, and they have a ton of ablative wounds. And like I mentioned before, Custodes have a really hard time picking up infantry chaff. So Draxus really pulled her weight here. So Purge the Foe was actually the one mission which was a advantage for me because he
Yes,
has so many
definitely.
MSU and they're so cheap. It gives me a fighting chance. So I like to think it evened out the fact that I had no reps going into this into this matchup. I had no reps except for what you guys said is a toss up. And on top of that, it was GW layout. So I'm not really accustomed to it. So I just went with what I knew best and said, I'm going to try to hold my expansion the way I know best and go from there. Now, this game went a bit wishy-washy. I didn't end up actually holding the expansion I wanted until turn three. And again, Purgiful really helped here because as long as you hold one, you get the 4 points. You only hold more, you get four. So I figured as long as I could take him off of the objectives on my turn, I can keep the primary game close.
Yeah, that's really how Purge the Foe is played. It's much different from playing like Linchpin or Take and Hold. It's really dependent on how many objectives your opponent is holding, because then you want to just basically either tie them to be tied on primary essentially, or you want to risk it to hold more and then see if he can see what their response is essentially, see if they can do it. Otherwise, you score 8 instead of 4 against them to get that advantage in primary.
Yeah, and that what you said there really summed up why Liam was not happy going first.
Oh, he
Because
went first. Okay, yeah. So you were able to dictate exactly what number of objectives he needs to be holding, and you can control what he's holding as well.
he chose tempo. I just matched
Okay,
it, right?
right.
Because I'm
Yeah,
going second. I'm like, you want to come out? Show me how many you're holding, and I will allocate the resources to nullify it.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Otherwise, we go 10-10 until turn five. I'll hold three and I'll win by four.
Yep.
Or eight if I kill more, right? And that's it. In singles, I win by one. I don't care. So he
Hmm.
knew he had to come out and do a risky play. So I will say this. This was the one game where my dice saved me because, we danced around playing cat and mouse, not really exchanging. Drax's shooting twice couldn't kill 10 guardsmen. I was quite sad because that would give me 8 points turn two for kill one and kill more, but I couldn't do it, and I was like, all right, let's do it. The dice did come back. So the biggest breaking point here was it got to the point where I had to extend out and hold all three, turn three. And it invited him in a way where he was able to connect with all three of his big anchor units, the ACDCs.
Yeah, the three ACDCs. Yeah.
They connected with my one guard squad and two warden squads. I was able to stage a heroic ingress heroic play to split the attacks of one ACDC. But like I don't know the math on Jason. You know the math better than I do. Liam told me when they go Super Saiyan with the reroll once per battle, reroll hits and wounds plus one a wound. On average, with the Warden Pheno Pain, they pick up three or four.
That math sounds right because with ACDCs, they yeah on their go turn they can plus one hit, plus one wound, and then they can use the CP to reroll hits. And if they pass the Desperate Pact, they also reroll wounds as well. So it's like reroll hits and wounds, probably hitting you on threes with sustain, and then wounding you on fours with yeah, well, wounding you on
Rerolling.
rerolling, which is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So on average, each ACDC anchor unit connecting picks up three to four Warden squads. And now imagining all three of them are now connecting across the entire map. So on average, I lose 12 Wardens, 9 to 12
Which
Wardens,
is
which
like most of your army,
it's just my
essentially.
entire army. If he picks up 12 Wardens
Yeah.
this game, uh, he picked up two
Oh my god. So you must have
across.
rolled super hot on like the saves and feel no pains or whatever.
I failed. I made average saves, but I meant super hard on the field pain. Like he rolled above average. He told me I didn't like we were running out of time, so he just threw dice, and I'm like, you know what, dude, you have been a stellar opponent this entire game. I do not want to weaponize the clock here, so I trust you. And all I saw was him taking those 36 dice that like are in a canister, just tossing them in. I'm like, oh my God, like, all right, I trust you. It's a lot of dice, man. And he's like, here's all your saves, and I'm like. All right, here we go. And then I remember his face. I was like, oh man, I'm rolling all these four ups. Like, oh no, the Philippines. And he picked up two Warden squads across the entire three flanks. And at that point, it's like, that is this game. And um, I was able to, not kill the entire squad effectively, but enough where I was able to hold all three to get my hold more. And then next turn, I got kill more and then cast steamroll from there. Now,
Yeah.
one thing I do want to point out here is if you're ever in a situation where you don't know a matchup, the most important thing is to ask your opponent questions based on what you know your army can do very well. So I'm used to playing Custodes since before Necrons when there was like the Wraith bomb was meta, and I knew that the key there was to precision out the character, the Technomancer. Because
Hmm.
if you snipe it out, the Wraiths lose a Phenol Pain. So knowing that from like months ago, I was like, hey, if I kill your character, what does that do? And I believe it removes the 5 invuln or something. I'm
Yes,
forgetting.
it
Yes.
gives the 5 invuln as well as the ability to have the go turn, the +1 hit, +1 wound.
Yeah. So he didn't really care about the go turn because he already used it.
Yeah,
But
because they already used. Yeah.
yeah. But the 5 Phenol Pain getting removed meant that the 18 ablative cultist wounds were not as annoying. Because rather than rely on RNG of hoping he's gonna roll 5 ups, every wound I make here, it just kills cultists. So I started
Yeah,
shredding everything.
they just straight die, or they have to go to the 6 up feel no pain, which is much less reliable. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And Feel Pain is 2 damage. We're rolling 2 6s, and you must make 2 6s because it's 2 damage on one wound models. So
Yes.
I know that Blade Champs having that built-in precision profile gives me a certain breakpoint in certain matchups. So I knew that. I didn't know ACDC, but I asked him, hey, like if I kill this character, will this do me anything? He goes, yeah, I'll take my 5 invuln. I go, okay. Position out the character, then the wardens go, and that's how the primary game went from there. The game was still close, and it was 100 to 80. So it was still very close regardless. Um, but yeah, that breakpoint swing, I definitely diced him there, that's for sure.
Yeah, I can. That definitely sounds like he got diced pretty hard when he hits with 3 ACDC units and ends up only killing two Warden models. Like that sounds unfortunate. And
Yes.
ACDC is definitely an army that plays primary very well, just based on the number of bodies. Like Brian Crothers, like he's a fantastic player. He's been playing ACDC for such a long time, and I had the privilege to play him before too on X Planet's stream there. So yeah, that was an experience as well. So I definitely understand the pain of having 3 units of ACDC kind of hit your lines in one turn.
Yeah, I was blessed. I know you played Crothers, and I know Adel played ACDC in our last round for BPO where we qualified for Worlds. And I was like, great, I dodged ACDC. I don't have to worry about it. And like Karma came and went, no, you're playing it twice now. You're just paying your dues.
Yes, well, spoilers, maybe more than once.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But yeah,
but
that
that's for
was
later. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
that's for
for later.
later.
All right. Anyway, so let's move on to the fifth round. So this was another W, 4-0,
4-0.
round 5. Yeah, who are you playing there?
It's getting sweaty, getting hot. I played Carlos. So guess my luck. I got another mirror. I got the Custodes, but this time it was the Dread detachment. And
Which a lot of people are hyped about. Like a lot of people see a lot of potential here, and I definitely like. I read over the detachment, and like, it's interesting. It's very dreadnought focused. They play the venerable dreadnoughts that can come back to life on a 2 up with D6 wounds and become super annoying. But yeah, there are some potential flaws. So yeah, let's run through his list, and then how about how your game went.
yeah, so Carlos brought the Custodian Dreads. So he brought 2 Telemons, 2 tanks, 3 squads of bikes, and oh, I'm blanking the other stuff that he brought. A couple sister chaffs and 3 venerable contemptors. The one that you said mentioned earlier that just get up on a 2 up with D6 wounds. And this game was a bit of a grind. Now, um, I know internally in our team we have talked about me trying out dreads, and I even purchased some of the dreads to try it out because I didn't want to say no immediately. So I was really glad I had this matchup, just so that I could actually experience that list from a good pilot. Because anyone who goes 4-0 at LVO is going to be a very good player. And
Exactly.
and the breakpoints that were identified in this game were exactly the breakpoints that I was worried about when I was piloting it. And the way I see Custodian Dreads is very much like Star Shatter free nerf, where they are meant to be very killy and quote unquote durable, but what they lack from that is they lack OC. So I know the detachment gives like +2 OC to the dreads that are OC5. But even if you have three dreads on an objective, it's still not enough to take off 18 OC wardens. And
Yep.
I know the argument's gonna be made here where people are like, well, if you crash five wardens in a blade champ into three dreads, even a field pain, you're gonna lose one or two, and that's enough to offset it. And perfectly right. The thing is, I mentioned earlier in the podcast that you have to be very comfortable keeping your head cool when you're watching yourself get tabled. And this
Hmm.
is exactly what happened in this game. I played strictly mission, and it didn't go the way I wanted to. So I tried doing the same thing I did in my previous mirror match in this tournament, where I tried to take out the tanks so that it was more of a monophase approach for Carlos. The problem was he was so good at positioning, I could not get to the tanks without overextending or rely on dice to kill the tanks or within an unreasonable amount of dice to get to the tanks. So when I saw that, I pivoted my approach to rather than trying to blow out and go for the kill, I ended up playing the objective. What I ended up doing was this is the ritual. So I made sure to space out my objectives in such a way where a single guard squad could hold two or three. And then he started bunching up and mirroring me. So that gave me the opportunity to send a warden squad into a venerable contemptor. And yes, I kill it. Yes, it comes back up at D6 wounds, but my warden squad still stays on the objectives. And I remember all I did was for the entire game is I would send warden squads in over 3 or 4 turns to just take him off of 15 primary. And they did their job. They crashed in. They picked up one dreadnought. Again, 400 points into 150 is not a good trade for points. But when you deny 15 points primary and you do this for 3 turns, it becomes a 45 point denial turn or a 45 point denial game. Then you're tabled. That's a good trade-off. And that's what ended up happening is I got completely tabled. I think I had a single sister squad left in my backfield, and I think my Rhino was sputtering about tank shocking things and it did cleanse for me turn 5, and that was it. I had 2 units left and I was tabled. And I won 88-66. And it was because at the very end he had bottom of turn on ritual. So he was able to score 15
Yeah.
turn
So you
5.
auto 15s, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that the break points that I was very nervous about for Custodian's Dreads were confirmed. And also I know a lot of people loved bikes, and I was hesitant on using them as well. And after LVO, I am very confident saying that bikes seem great. They move fast, but they do not have the punch that I need in order to play the game that I play. It might work for other play styles, but it does not work for mine. And I'm glad I didn't go changing things around because I was very happy of what ended up happening here.
Wow. Yeah. So it's good that you're able to kind of like get that experience, even though not piloting the Dreadnought list, but kind of seeing it from in the hands of another good pilot and kind of coming to those kind of conclusions. So that's great to hear. So now you are basically 5-0. You're potentially going into Shadow Round.
Oh,
Very
dude.
exciting.
Oh.
And who was your round 6 opponent?
So I played Derek from 40K Dirtbags. So if in case you guys don't know, he is like I believe the number one CSM player in the world ranked.
Yeah, he won Best in Faction CSM at
Yeah,
for ITC.
yeah. So he is not a slouch. Like he runs like a 12K like subscriber base, does coaching. Like he's up there, right? And I played him. And of course, with my luck, it was ACDC. And very nice guy. I have what's it called? I've never been to it through a 6 round tournament. And usually what I do is I have my usual support things. Like I have my cart with me and stuff, and uh, having to travel there to LVO with my army as I carry on. Remind me at the end of this episode to tell you about my carry on story, Jason, before we leave. But
Yes, yes. I've heard it, but
I need to
for the
tell you this
listeners,
story. The viewers need to know the hilariousness of carrying on Warhammer. Anyways, back to the last game before that story. I didn't have my cart with me or anything, and it really had a detriment on like my endurance and not being over 6 rounds. It was exhausting, absolutely exhausting. And I think that not to take away from his win, I was just so tired going into this game, and I had
No,
faced AC.
definitely. You
Yeah,
don't take away from his win because he experienced the exact same thing as you, right? Like he went through 6 grueling rounds of Warhammer too, right? So at this point, everyone is exhausted. They just want to get it over with, and so. But you do have the motivation, right? Because you are in T Whip, so you want to be able to
yeah.
still play your best Warhammer.
Yes, yes. I was playing right up beside like Art of War was right beside me, and I was like, oh gosh, I'm really am Icarus. I am in the sun's core right now. They're all around me. The sharks are circling, man. But we played the game. It was terraformed, and I did what I learned from my first game, where I staged a bit conservatively. The break point here, and I will admit this, is that I lost in deployment. And the reason being is because it was Terraform and he got first turn. And as you mentioned before, AC/DC move very fast. So it was a very
Yeah.
textbook win for him. All he did was he moved the AC/DC squads up and terraformed all three no man's lands. And I went, I have no way of attacking midboard or your expansion in turn one because I was deployed so defensively. And I had a shot at attacking my expansion, and I failed a 4-inch charge rerolling.
Oh no.
So I didn't even get like one terraform denied, and I was like, all right, game. And you know what? I took it as an opportunity to learn, right? Like, I after I realized the game was done, I was kind of relieved because I didn't do shadow round because I had plans the next day.
Yes.
In Las Vegas. And when I realized I was losing it, I was like, you know what? How many times am I going to be able to play into the top players of the world? So I took it as like an opportunity to learn and play as if I was in teams, as if I was blunting the number one CSI player in the world. How am I going to do this? So I started playing that fashion, and it ended up being a 60-100 loss to me. He basically jailed me for 3 turns, and I managed to dig myself out of it. But
Yeah.
and hold two I don't think I could terraform it, but I managed to hold two. I turned four, turn five, and then that was it. He had gone over max primary while he had jailed me. He scored almost max secondaries, or he did score max secondaries, and I scraped 60 points. So I think in teams that would be an 18-2 if I recall correctly. So not a
Yeah,
good
40
teams.
points.
Yeah, 40 points, right? As I'm thinking. Yeah. So not a good performance in teams, but I am Icarus. I burned up, and I was fully expecting that at some point. But great opponent, great player. You can check out his side of the story on his podcast when he broke it down. Was he went into top 8 Shadow Round, and then he played Jack Harpster as well the next day. I saw him play on stream, so yeah, I mean, he has his broadcast, so he'll go over in detail as well.
Nice. So yeah, ACDC is just that type of army where, like, especially on Terraform, I experienced the exact same thing when I played Crothers. I played on Terraform as well. He went first, and he was able to terraform on all 3 objectives. I couldn't stop it, and I was like, "All right, cool, man. At this point, I'm just gonna play by differential and see how much I can lose by." As soon as that
Yeah,
happens, like that's pretty much like you can't stop it because there's
no,
no way to stop like 21 man body from being able to terraform, right?
no.
So especially if he has, because he probably has Cypher too, right? So, and
Yes,
then
he
like
had
if you have like a
Cypher.
lone op, yeah, like lone op to be able to, really not let you interact with him in any way and be able to terraform is just a super nasty combination. So,
Yeah, we talked after, and there were different things I could have done. So what I'm gonna try for my practices later on, moving forward, when I go into like Canhammer, Toronto Open, Worlds this year, is I'm gonna try doing what he told me, and he said like just because I can go 33 inches and 24 inches doesn't mean I will go 33 inches and 24 inches, and you have to weigh that risk versus benefit. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take what he advised me after and apply it and see how it sticks. And make sure you deploy where you can hold your expansion and attack theirs, no matter what. But if they're gonna hit you that hard, have heroic setups that you can split the attacks off, and you have to have that foresight, right? But this is now we're now entering another level of competitive play, which I need to crack, and that's just part of the journey,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So overall, you went 5-1. What was your final placing at the end of
I
the day?
placed 56th out of 1,200 players, so or 1,100 players, sorry. So top 5%.
That
That's
was that's a nothing to be upset about. That is a fantastic
no.
showing. Congratulations on
Thank
that.
you. Thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah,
I that is yeah, that's great. So
I gotta tell you
overall,
the story. This,
yeah, you got to go ahead and tell the story about
okay,
your
this was the
TSA
most.
stuff.
This is the most exciting part of this podcast. I could give a crap about my 5-1. Okay, so context. I went with my fiance to Las Vegas. So, we were staying for the whole week, and I said, we're gonna time it for LVO. And I had the struggle of how to bring my army to Vegas. And there were horror stories of people bringing unchecked luggage because even though it's put as fragile, like I remember I was talking to Cody Brown, another Canadian player. He brought his case, Jason, the one you have. He brought that
Yeah,
case to LVO, and he paid like for business class, where it's insured and everything, and marked as fragile. Yeah, the people tossed it in the
yeah, they
plane.
don't give a shit about it. They just like throw it in as if it's just like garbage.
Yes, and it cracked. Like the plastic screen cracked.
Oh no, that's terrible.
Yeah, yeah. So like he was showing it to me when I was there. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm glad I didn't do that. But just so you guys know, if you're ever traveling for an event, do not do it unchecked. Just do it on carry on. Do what I did. So this is where the funny part happens. So I'm carrying my carry on through the airport, and everyone is giving me looks because I have this transparent plastic box I'm holding full of these toy soldiers, and they're all like, "What is this guy doing?" And my fiance is like, "I don't know this guy. He's just following me. I'm not associated with this man. I don't know why he's following me." It was hilarious, and I remember going through security. Um, they were like, "We don't know what this is," and I'm like, "Oh boy." And I remember there was and Carrie, my fiance, was there, and she can attest to this. Security people like swarmed me, but not in a bad way. They were all just curious as to what I was bringing on board. So I had to open up the case and show them, like, here are my little toy soldiers. They're called custodes. They're like golden boys that like guard the king. And I'm basically describing Warhammer 40K in the most layman's terms possible. And my fiance is just there like, oh my God, like what is my life right now?
Like,
Like
how much of a nerd can you be to bring toy soldiers onto a plane
like people
to
go to Las
travel?
Vegas, yeah,
Yeah,
to
to
get
go to Las
drunk.
Vegas to play.
It's called Sin City for a reason. Nah, my man is bringing toy soldiers on a plane. And I remember I got pulled over to like secondary and tertiary security check when I was at Pearson Airport, and all of them are like, "Oh, you're not in trouble. I'm not actually here to scan you. I just want to see what they were looking at." And I'm just like showing them all.
Word spread about these toy soldiers at
Yeah,
TSA or at
yeah,
the security.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So in customs was a bit more serious because they were like, "What is this?" and that kind of stuff, and they thought I was bringing like razor blades into the plane because the custodians have spears, and they snapped off a few, and after the fourth snap, like, "Oh, these are plastic." I'm like, "Yes, they're plastic blade. They're plastic swords. Like they're toy soldiers." Um, but yeah, just so advice for people who are going traveling for events, just magnetize, get like a plastic tray from Walmart or Dollarama, get a magnetic sheets from Amazon, and it works. Like it really does work. I think to the trip and back, I only had I think like one flag broke in the airplane. The rest of the damage was just customs and security just going through it all, making sure there weren't actual weapons.
yeah. Like when I spoke with Ridovan Scary
Yeah.
about like traveling internationally because I was actually interested in going to LVO and going to Adepticon potentially. He
Mhm.
actually said like using like you either do like get like really good magnets like you said or surprisingly, like the GW foam cases are also really good. Like, but it depends on kind of what army you play. Like, if you're playing really fiddly armies, then like the foam kind of breaks. But those are like actually pretty heavy duty cases that you can bring on
Yes.
as carry on, and those you won't be able to easily break as well. But again, and those are actually a little bit more like a little bit more inconspicuous because it's a black box instead of a transparent box like yours. So maybe not as many people will give me weird looks. It'll just look like I'm carrying a gun, which is actually probably worse.
Yeah,
Like those
it looks like a
look
gun
like gun
case.
cases.
Yeah, it looks like a gun
Yeah.
case if people don't know what it is. Yeah. I
But
remember on the flight there were a couple guys that were Canadian that were going to LVO, and like we said hi, and and my fiance's like, "This is a plane full of nerds. Y'all just bring your Warhammer models." I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much." And
this is your life now.
this is
Yep.
your life now. You said yes to this, man. I don't tell you. You knew what you signed up for.
That's
But
funny.
yeah, Elvia was great. The atmosphere was amazing. I was gonna say like next year, I'm definitely interested in going again, especially if I'm trying to run like a singles. Like last season, I wasn't really trying to hit ITC. I was mainly trying to like grow Warring Warriors and grow the organization. And now this year, I want to focus because I got a Worlds ticket. I want to focus on trying to see how far I can go with my singles ITC. So I've signed up to a bunch of single events and that kind of stuff. So. We'll see
Mhm.
if I go to LVO next year. But if we do, I think we should do a whole Warring Warriors send off because we can get Airbnb. And I think Brian did it too. Brothers, he had this thing where he signed up as a community ticket for LVO, and he got like a banner made by Frontline Gaming where it says Community Champions, and it has the logo of the other guys there.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think you showed me a picture. We can put it up here
Yeah,
as well afterwards.
yeah.
And it's just really cool to kind of see your logo being represented on like the biggest event in the world for Warhammer, and just a really cool and like wholesome feeling. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what we'll do is we'll chat, but if we can get a couple of guys there, I'd definitely be down to get like a community team ticket and then just get a banner for Warring Warriors and just like go again and see what we see, right?
Hell yeah. So let's talk about like what kind of things we have moving forward. So after LVO, I know you are going to Berry Bash in March,
Yes.
but before that, there's actually going to be the Torchlight Teams event. So
Yes.
there's that as well. So and then in April we have the Toronto Teams run by Jeff.
Jeff Brown. Yep.
Yeah, Jeff Brown, and then in May we have Canhammer. So a lot of events coming up for Warhammer, and hopefully more things to talk about. Potentially more placings or X and ones or stuff like that, so that we can have a little bit more talk. Yeah,
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff in the pipeline. Hopefully, provided, it all the pieces come to play, we'll definitely have more content for you guys. And we appreciate the support always, so make sure to like, subscribe, and we appreciate the time you took to listen to us blabber about toy soldiers, as my fiance says.
yeah. So
But
it's always a pleasure. Yeah, we'll yeah. Thanks again, everyone, for listening. And if you reach this far, yeah, we really appreciate it. So give us a rating, subscribe, and follow us on the podcast. Thanks for listening.
thanks.
Take
Bye.
care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.